Pull up a chair and buckle up. It's the Original Strength BodCast. Hey everyone, today on the BodCast, I am talking to my good friend Chip Morton. Chip has been a professional strength and conditioning coach for 37 years, 27 years in the NFL, and that alone is, well, that's pretty spectacular. But he's also been a strength and conditioning coach for 10 years at the collegiate level. Anyway, Chip is rich with knowledge and wisdom when it comes to training, strength and conditioning, obviously. But he also is rich in dealing with people. Chip has a gift of not just training a person in the ways of strength, but building a person in the ways of character and who they are, who they're meant to be. This is a fun conversation with a good friend. I hope you enjoy it. Thanks for listening. All right, so Chip, you're a strength and conditioning coach with an amazing history of being a strength and conditioning coach. Can you fill me in a little bit on your background and your history?
Depends on how far back you want to go. Because my strength training history, I have an interesting history in strength training because my 7th and 8th grade, and this has been said before, it's public record. My 7th and 8th grade health teacher was Mike Katz, who was Mr. America, and competed for the Mr. Universe. He's part of the Pumping Iron, the original film. So my interest in weight training, it's not a storybook. It's not things stories are made of, but it's kind of interesting that he inspired me to, not that I was getting sand kicked in my face or I wanted to be like him, but I kind of wanted to be strong. That was a fascinating man. And it wasn't because it was muscles. He was a fascinating man. So I don't think it was that I wanted to be muscle, but I admired him because he was, in our little world, kind of a celebrity of sorts. And, he used to go away to California, like he'd take sabbaticals and go train before a show. But to me, he was very, very kind. And I always thought, man, this teacher, this man he really cares about us. And he had an easy way of moving, a smooth way of moving. He was not excitable, very low key. But he was so kind to us and really encouraging. Like I was pestering him, man. We would do these, that was in the 70s. And so I don't know your listeners, but in the 70s, cigarette smoking, there was a big campaign on the dangers of cigarette smoking, because in the 70s people were still smoking cigarettes, avidly, and it was kind of new to think, oh, this might have harmful effects. And so one of the campaigns from the American Lung Association, the American Heart Association, was these poster drives. So Mr. Katz would have all these extra credit opportunities where we could make posters, stop smoking posters, or just write up papers or things about health topics. And I don't know how many extra credit points I accrued, but I had a lot, just because I wanted to please him. I wanted so much to impress him and to please him, because I really appreciated him. And he once told my mom, like at one of those parent-teacher conferences, that I was a great kid and that he hopes his son, grows up like me. Just something of that effect. But it was so esteeming, so affirming. So, that's where I kind of got into, and I used to read the muscle magazines and all that. So strength training has always been a part of my growing up. I mean, since 7th grade, 1970, probably 12 years old on. We had a little pull-up bar in our kitchen between the doors, the old kind you'd put up, literally screw it in between the doors, not the kind that nowadays that hook onto the door again, but this was in the wood across the door frame. And I remember there would be days I guess now you'd call it density training or greasing the groove, but I'd be in the house on a Sunday, and every 15 minutes I'd do a set of pull-ups. And I think at one point I got up to like 700 pull-ups in sets of like 20, 25, just that's so my interest in exercise and training, uh, I always enjoyed it. And certainly my cats helped launch that interest. Um, so I've been through it all. I mean, from the bodybuilding magazines through Nautilus training, the high intensity training, um, that I did a lot of in high school. We had a Nautilus center nearby. Um, and it was like, I didn't know what Nautilus was, but I just knew that when they took you through the one set each workout, my buddy Pete would always vomit. You know what I mean? I wouldn't, but Pete always would. And now I know why, and I'm familiar, but it was called Unisport Fitness. It was in like over in North Haven or Fairhaven, Connecticut. It was a little Nautilus gym. Like they used to have those Nautilus gyms where they'd have a line of Nautilus and some free weights in the back. And so, I've done all that, and always been interested in it. So I guess when I came to, I was a competitive swimmer. Um, and I went to North Carolina, and that was my first exposure to strength coaching as a profession. It was a Division I program, and my typical answer is I was a Division III swimmer in a Division I program. Um, and I walked on, but I was around elite athletes and part of an elite program at the time. And part of that training was we had a dry land program. We had a strength coach that was assigned to us. And I was like, I'd never hear. I mean, that's a job. That's a profession. Here's a guy who gets to hang out in the weight room, like right now I am listening, and you listen to music all day, and you train athletes, and you get to wear sweats to work, your work clothes, and you get to train athletes. I mean, I thought it was phenomenal. Like this can't be. I want some of this. I want to coach because it's what I love. I love the process training. And because experientially I had to do it. I was immersed in that because that's how I stayed competitive probably. And I knew it's what I needed to do, to add to my gifting, but then to find out you could do it. And so early on, after my first year, the swim coach, Frank Comfort, was like, "Hey, we want you to be around. We would like to have you be a part of the program. You just can't swim anymore." I was like, "I know. I figured. I knew that was coming." And I got into the coaching side, and I'd help out in the weight room and help out with any duties that needed to be, with the team. But got heavily into the strength training part of it. And in those days, then when it came time for, okay, now you graduate, and I had a degree, and my degree was zoology, which, don't get freaked out, it's biology without the plants. But what are you going to do with that? In those days, you went to med school or you went into research, and I wasn't interested in either. So and exercise sciences, we know it was that's 1985, was a new endeavor. There weren't that many programs. And long story short, ended up a friend of mine that I swam with, Randy Heyer, lived in Columbus, Ohio. And he's like, "Hey, you ought to come up, check out Ohio State. Maybe they have something in a grad program that you can look at." And it turns out they did. They were one of the early successful exercise science programs back in those days, mainly the cardiac rehab kind of thing. That's what the 80s, that's what it was. Or, carbohydrate metabolism, kind of not the strength end, but turns out they had a master's tract in strength training and coaching. And so I went up there with him and knocked on doors and met the dean of the grad school. And he directed me to the exercise phys lab. Dr. David Lamb was a preeminent exercise scientist, wrote textbooks and all that. And he was very gracious. And I remember him asking me, "So what is it you want?" And I'm like, "Well," he said, "So what is it you want to study in grad school? What do you want to continue your education?" And I said, "Well, I enjoy the training process. I enjoy training athletes, and I enjoy strength training." And wasn't a great answer. It wasn't an intellectual answer or response, but I knew where my passions were. And he's like, well, you want to go over and talk to our strength coach, Steve Bliss, over in the football offices, because he might have a grad assistant, position, and he did, and they had a whole entire program. And so I ended up going there, and I was into coaching. So as a grad assistant at Ohio State, at the same time I was the strength coach. Part of my graduate assistantship was to be the strength coach assigned to a Columbus City school, which was Franklin Heights High School on the west side. So I go to grad school, and I'm in grad school to learn about training athletes, and I am the strength coach for Franklin Heights. So in the early days, I just applied what I knew from my years as an athlete. And that was, Monday we squatted and the rest of it. And Wednesday we benched and the rest of it. And Friday we deadlifted and the rest of it. And pretty typical 80s model. And but just started that journey. From Ohio State as a grad assistant, was hired at Penn State with the football program under Chet Furman. And that was a totally different way so Ohio State was more the Nebraska style, bench squat. We didn't do very many power cleans, but you could. But what Steve Bliss gave me was the freedom to learn and to try different things with the athletes that I was training. And we had scheduled athletes. So you could, as long as you got this X, Y, A, B, and C done, you could do X, Y, and Z and learn to coach. So Steve was great in giving that freedom to me. And I was around really intelligent people that taught me a lot, and just continued to learn, and went to Penn State, and it continued to grow and meet people, other coaches in the field, and learn. And then I moved on to the NFL. And so 27 years in the NFL. Now I'm circling back to the college game again at South Carolina. So I guess you could say I began coaching, and I'll say officially in 1985. So I don't know how many years that is, but
It's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot, and I really have enjoyed it. I enjoy learning. I was telling one of our recruiting coordinators that I'm a gym rat. I enjoy. Probably, oftentimes there's a cost for that, for being a gym rat, and it can be it has at times been hard in my marriage because of the time commitment. I've always had been able to have my children around me, even at work, bring them around. So particularly my sons, they grew up around it. They grew up in the NFL because the Brown family, the owners of the Bengals, were open to that, and so was Coach Lewis. So that was good, and having them with me at training camp. So they spent a lot of time, and my daughters did too, just around it. So I made that work, but hard on time with your wife. It can be, because it's a big drain. So it's a balance of my love for my family and my love for the passion for where some of my giftings lie, and that's been. So it's now that I'm on the other side of it, it's moving a lot slower for me. I'm now finally learning to manage that time better and manage that balance better. But as we were talking about before we started, having Aaron here, my son Aaron here, I'm still training my son. He's a football player here, and so when I program for the team, I'm programming for my son also, which gives me a great. We talk about that in recruiting. I mean, my son is in this program, so our programming is going to be safe and effective and efficient and reasonable. And we're going to try to develop these young men to the best of our ability, because my son is one of them. So, and that strikes a chord with some people, but so that's kind of my coaching. And you can ask any question in that. I've probably tried it or seen it all, literally, in the strength business over that length of time.
So I was trying to do the math. It seems like you've been a strength and conditioning coach now for 37 years, 27 years in the NFL.
Isn't that crazy?
That's crazy. Well, okay. So wait, though, 27 years in the NFL as a strength and conditioning coach already sounds kind of extremely rare.
Yeah. Yeah.
How are there any other coaches that have been a coach
Oh
or
yeah,
that work?
I'm not, I was what made the difference for me. There are great men, great coaches. Some of my mentors and men that have become friends. Uh, it was probably more true in the earlier days, like when I got into it. Some of the greats, Johnny Parker and Al Miller. There are Mike Wojcik, Johnny from the Giants, and Al from the Denver and later Atlanta, and Mike from Dallas and then New England. I mean, there have been men that have done it a long time. It's probably more rare nowadays. Uh, with and I'll tread lightly, but I'll speak honestly. Um, when I got into the NFL, experience and um, time on the job, they were revered qualities. Like in the history of man, I think experience and mastering your craft, if you in fact have mastered your craft, that was valued. Now there are coaches that coached a long time that didn't continue to learn. I'm not speaking to that group, but for the passionate men that coached into their later years, who were always that continued to grow and learn, there was a lot there to offer. And it seems as though uh, things are changing a bit where that either I couldn't speak for the reasons why, but that's not as valued uh, in today's probably in today's NFL. I don't know if that's fair to say that, but that's been my experience. It's a younger league, there's younger coaches. Um, and I think oftentimes we think, well, or it's said that relatability and an older guy can't relate to the young today's athletes. Well, I don't think that is true. I think it comes down to the person in front of you. Um, and to make a general statement, it'd be like, well, to say an older coach can't relate would be it's a blanket statement, just as well a younger coach doesn't know what he's doing. That's not true either. You know what I mean? It's who are we talking about? Let's look at this person and see what what's that what are the gifts that person possesses? What's the skill set? And so um, it's good to be here at South Carolina because I am maybe the most senior coach on the staff, which is an interesting place to be. Um, but Coach Shane Beamer is been great to work for, a head coach, and Luke Day working alongside Luke and for Luke. It's um, they respect what I know. They ask my insight. They don't, I'm still part of the staff. I'm not, I'm not riding roughshod on anything. It's just a healthy exchange and using people. You know, we all have unique and wonderful gifts, and I think Coach Beamer and Luke, they are two men that, well, let's use those gifts, or why not? Please use those gifts to help us be better, independent of age, rank, or serial number. Um, so it's a fun place for me, and I don't know if you'd say the SEC is fun, but it's enjoyable, and it's enjoyable to be around people that care and that want to be great and that are willing to work at their craft because they care. So
So you're like well, you're a professional's professional, like because you love coaching, but you
yeah.
also strive to continue to learn.
Hmm.
And you're very passionate not just about what you've learned, but you're passionate about helping people. I've seen you in action,
Hmm.
and you are like you pour into people.
Hmm.
So you've had like 37 years of building, mentoring,
Hmm.
coaching, helping, lifting athletes.
Yeah.
So it's amazing. It's an amazing career, and it seems like at times you're just getting started still.
Hmm.
Um,
That's what it feels like. All the stuff you and I talk about, I'm like a little kid.
right. Exactly. Like, so you have a stars in your eye approach to strength training and to what you do. And that's got to be amazing to not get tired or to not lose your flame, right? Like, and I think that is rare for any profession, not just strength and conditioning. So I think that's just amazing.
Yeah.
But I got a question. In all of that time,
Mm-hmm.
because there's so many fads
Mm-hmm.
in the strength world or the exercise world, you could probably separate the two, the strength training world and the exercise world.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. Well,
but
you'd be
what
surprised.
I don't know. I'm going to ask you, what have there been any fads that were just like that you got into, that you investigated, and it wasn't useful to you and that you just got rid of it?
Mm, I wouldn't say I wouldn't say completely got rid of. There are things that are emphasized less in our program or in the way I program now, and some things that are more applicable. For instance, the concepts of original strength um, that you and I, we met. It was officially 2014, but it was before that. But now your heart and your you being a vessel for wisdom, um it's just, that's an amazing story. And the way you teach, we were together a couple weeks ago at OS Pro. I can say that, right? We can talk
Mhm.
about it. Okay.
Yeah.
um and I'm still going over the material. Like, I look at that, I know you chuckle when I ask for, can I get the latest manual? And some of it is like, I like to have stuff to read, but I'll wear them out. I mean, I wear it out. I'll just go over my notes, and then I'm applying that in the present, those concepts. So to answer your question, I don't think there's, first of all, I've had good teachers that shared good information. Certainly I'd read everything, and I read the muscle magazines, but even in the muscle magazines, there are takeaways. There are things that I still, because that was an era where there was still some information that was good. Um, because obviously that the muscle magazines, they know how to build muscle. There's some things there that they know, that population. So I've never just said that was a total waste of time, but I've held on to things through the years and continue to add more. But now for me, I was telling my son Aaron today, now it's all through that lens, and I don't use that lightly, that lens of original strength, which is
Mm.
really that lens of, let's train in a way that honors how we are designed, how we move, and the more I learned about, the brain and the nervous system and the muscle, the system as a whole and how it responds to movement, the more the truth of our original design and how to train that continues to manifest. Um, so now most of my training is all through that lens of, okay, first of all, the pillars and the resets, and they're all intertwined. It's all movement based, but it's moving purposefully in a way that honors our design, but really makes you feel good. And that's another concept. When you tell people, I want to train, I like to feel good. Well, who doesn't? You know what I mean? Yeah, I'm a little bit older chronologically, but I want to feel good. My son Aaron is 20, and he wants to feel good when he trains. Um, so that's, I don't think I've discarded anything as a fad or not, but I've just kept the things and tucked them away. And so that my toolbox now, I've got a couple toolboxes because of all the things I've been exposed to and tried and been around. It might be one funny. It might be one set of pliers from my time at Penn State, but I still have those pliers. I still have that set of pliers in that toolbox that I can use. I can use, and I do use it. It's there. It's accessible. Um, I just layer that now with honoring our design. So it's how much better is it, you know? When we got done today, as a matter of fact, we did deadlifts as a part of our finisher, and after the deadlifts, we talked. You and I talked about this. That heavy loaded bilateral stance, grind it out. It's good to lift things from the floor. It is a good movement. And afterwards, we did some speed skaters. And Aaron said, "Oh, this feels so good." I'm like, "Yeah," because it's great to lift heavy weights off the floor, and our bodies were designed to do that too. But like you and I talked about, that's a little bit of a threat to the nervous. Like, hey, but if it's progression, it's progressive and sequential, and it fits into a training. Yeah, okay, I can do it. Hooray! I will adapt. But then to be restored with that contralateral pattern, he's like, boy, that just felt so. And he kept going. He just kept doing it. I was like, keep going. Don't stop at 2 minutes. Just keep going. And he did. He's like, that felt so good. Like, yes, because you're restoring. You're telling your body again with that gait pattern, I'm safe. I feel, and I'm safe, and because I'm safe, I feel good, and it comes out. I feel great. Yeah. So it's all that kind of twisted around and turned and tumbled over these 30, whatever you said, 37 years. So
Right
yeah,
on.
you gotta ask
So
questions. I'll talk, Tim. If you
I
put up
know.
my
Well,
things, I will give long-winded answers.
I like to hear stories, so it's working out. All right. So you actually did a talk maybe a couple months ago that I missed, and you were talking about training the human.
Yeah.
So what does that mean to train the human?
Well, uh, and I'm not sure which talk, but where we're at now, and in fact, we're going to do one again here coming up, and it's going to be about training human beings. But we're built for relationship, right? We're built for relationship and um, interactions, whether it be meeting someone on the street or going for coffee or doing a podcast or training. For me, it's relationship driven, and it's an opportunity to connect because that will draw more out of that person. So um, my coaching um, my coaching philosophy, or the truth that I have uh, clung to over the probably the second half of my career is and it was a statement from the wisest man who ever lived, and it he said that the purposes of a person's heart are deep waters, um, but a man of understanding draws them out. And so we are all uniquely and wonderfully made. We're all the only one of us. Is I want to use. I want to mean the whole wide world, and we have wonderful gifts. We have foibles too. We have fears. We have things that make us fill us with joy, and we have things that make us afraid or sad. Um, we are beautifully designed, remarkably designed, and there are deep waters. There are deep things in each one of us, desires and cares and concerns that are down deep in there. And to come alongside someone, another person in relationship, and to kind of, if you liken it to a well, draw that good water out. It's way down in the deep places, or maybe lighten the burden of some of the crud that's in there as well. You can draw that out as well. But it's all part of that relationship or connection. Um, and it manifests in training. I see it all the time with people produce they produce better, and they perform better when you have done that work. So whether it's lifting weights or on the football field or in school or in their relationships, when you come close and you have a relationship, and you connect and go to set to work on drawing out the good stuff, um, or help them see the truths in them, everything goes better. Um, and you end up connecting, and oftentimes just, I would say, you can bless people with that. You can heal people with that. And blessing is, you can change people's lives. You can give them hope. Uh, you can bring them to tears. You can make them smile. You can make them be moved to hug you. Um, um, and on deeper levels, you can help them sort out their beliefs. Um, so that's when I say blessing, that I'm being very specific, and it denotes joy and wonder and care. So, and certainly performing on a squad or on a football game is part of that for some people. So it draws out, it helps people perform better in life, in all that they do, in all their experiences, and all their expressions. I just happen to be in a profession where a lot of the expressions are athletic, or the obvious ones are athletic. But boy, oh boy, I tell you what, the interactions I had with in my case, it's been mostly men because it's in football. So um, I'm not being exclusionary because I've trained female athletes, but the last many years it's been with young men or old men. Um, just life changing, and for me as well, interactions and relationships built. Um, we have players here in my first year here, older players who went through a lot of there was a lot of struggle here, um, in the football program, physically, emotionally, all of it. It was not a by all accounts a great place to be, and we had some older players that were scarred by that, and with that scarring, there's a layer of distance, okay, or skepticism, or you're the third strength coach I've had in my 4 years. Now, what are you going to tell me? Um, and then to have, there's a couple of guys in particular, and you start out where I'm because I'm and here's where the experienced man, the discerning man, um, a player that was a good player, a really good player for us. He ended up starting, but was not really. Some would say was not on board with what we were doing, and there was more than one discussion about it. And I was assigned, hey, go help him, go. And so I was sent out on that mission to, you know, for me, I would win his heart and win his mind, and it became a really good friendship. And in fact, I saw him today, and he's going to go off and play and go to the NFL now. And we're going to spend time, and we'll spend time Wednesday doing some resets. Hey, can you got time for me on Wednesday? And we'll talk, and we'll do resets, and we'll move, and you know. So he ended up giving me more. When you say I pour in, I have poured into him, but he's poured out so much more to me, and we have a friendship and a relationship. And you know, he ended his career here in beautiful form. I mean, he went from we're not sure where he stands, and he's not, is he buying into now his name will be on the wall at Williams-Brice Stadium as a captain elected after the season. It's a very honorable, not this was who are our captains after the fact. And now his name, I told him, now your name is forever on the walls at Williams-Brice. Not that that's a thing, but for this time in your life, that won't go on for it'll be there forever, but that is what it is. But for this year of your life, this chapter of your life, it's a beautiful story that you'll always have, that growth of going from here to here. And I got to share that what started out as an assignment, like, hey, can you help, can you help him, can you get to him, became this where we were, connected. And in fact, I'm going to miss him terribly. I'm going to miss him terribly next year. and when because he's graduated and moving on to the next level. But so, and there's many of those. That's the beauty for me, that I wasn't aware would be a part of it coming into it. All those years ago. But I've learned and grown in all ways as well, not just the X's and O's of training.
So you're a people whisperer.
You called me a healer, and I'll hold on to that. I don't know. People whisper, sure. I don't know. I mean, I have days where I need people to whisper to me, and you're that. You've been that person to me on many occasions. Because we all need to be whispered to at times. We all need to hear that small still voice, and sometimes we have ears to hear more readily than other times. So in those times when I'm resistant to it, or when I don't want to have my heart and ears open, it's men like you that will whisper to me. So that's the beauty of relationship. I guess, I don't know. That's, I'm not making more of it. People are gonna think this is corny and, oh, who is this guy? I'm as much a rough rider as anybody else, and I've seen and crass, harsh, aggressive things in my career. So I'm not soft, but I've been tenderized to people, and through this profession, and the rough the biggest rough riders and the guys that are those are the ones I've always had the most connection with, you know. Um, and to say, when you love someone, that brotherly love, filial love, there are a number of men, rough guys, that I have come to love, and I hope have come to love me. And those are the, now on the other end of this profession, or where I'm at right now, with less ahead and more behind me. Those are the things that I value most. Um, Original strength just makes it easy. Someone's coming. Hold on 1 second. So Tim, that was one of our coaches. So you talk about the cycle and the mentoring and the people. So now, I train our head coach. I spend time with him in the mornings, training him, and he works hard, and he enjoys it, and he's easy to train because he's textbook in everything he does. You ask him to do it, and he does it. And so I also have the lens of what it feels like to be in your 40s and training. You know what I mean? So I can appropriately dose it. You don't have to be over 40 to do that, but for me, it is. I know what it feels like now, and but now I've got a young coach. That's who came to the door. Who he's like, hey, can you help me? He's 23, and he's a GA, first year in coaching, and hey, can I need to get in shape? Can you help? I'm like, yeah, because Donnie thinks that it's got to be, I can't, I said, I know you don't have 2 hours anymore. The college days are over. You can't spend even an hour in the gym. And you certainly can't do some of the things that you were made to do in college, or I wouldn't have you. You don't have to do those things. It goes back to, let's train in a reasonable way, and just, so we slowed it way down. And I start with resets. I have another one of our coaches. We just do 10 minutes of resets and crawling, and we're gonna build. And okay, I feel bad. Yeah, and here's why. And so I got a young coach too on the front end that I can pour into. He sits next to me in staff meetings, and he's where I was, listening to older coaches, and yeah, tell me. And so I've started working with him now. Somewhere along, I picked him up last week somehow. So now it's a thing, and it's fine. It's fun. I'm a people whisperer, I guess. So.
You're many things, but that is one of them. Yes. But I think that's, I mean, I think that's what makes you a great strength and conditioning coach. It's not just your experience, but it's your ability to love people,
Yes.
and meet them. You find a way to their heart. So, and I've
Yeah.
seen you do it. I've seen you pull monsters down
Yeah.
who were like, they look like they were 2 foot taller than you. You pull their heads down to your shoulder and pray
Yes.
for them
Yes.
in the middle of an NFL game, or
Yeah.
during practice.
Yes.
It's amazing
Yes.
to watch you care for people.
Yeah.
And I think that's your superpower. That's what makes you great.
Yeah. Yes. Well, thank you. Thank you.
All right, so in the NFL, or I guess it doesn't have to be in the NFL, and because you mentioned that the athlete at South Carolina,
Mhm.
who who has been your most? Was there somebody that you couldn't reach?
Mm. It's funny of people that someone that people would recognize. Honestly, I don't, not that I couldn't reach him, but I didn't have that same connection. Was actually Andy Dalton, the quarterback. Very nice man, loved the Lord, good family man, dedicated to his craft. And maybe he didn't need me as much. Maybe that wasn't my role with him. That's probably more like it. That's probably more the truth. But um, I came alongside him. I trained him and helped him, but it wasn't a deep connected bond. And that's not it's not a bad thing. Like I said, that was I was not the person for that there. Um, but if you ask, that was probably one like, okay, for whatever we don't really connect that way. So all respect, I respect him. He has had a really really good career, and he was fun to be around. And I was happy when my family, we were thrilled when we drafted him at the Bengals. Um, After watching him play, I guess it was the Rose Bowl or something. But yeah, I'd say that. I'd say that. Um, None that, probably more of that in my younger days. I wasn't aware of that. Maybe in my early coaching career, I wasn't aware like I am now of my just about being intentional with those relationships. When I was younger, it happened, but I just, I thought I was a somewhat likable person and got along, and I was, and I had definitely I was always assigned to the difficult guys, the guys that didn't necessarily want to train. Oftentimes it was the skill players. They weren't interested in the weight room as much. And that's who I wasn't always best with, the guys who loved to train and didn't need a strength coach. They would do it on their own. I was always best with the guys that you had to go get to bring them in to work out. Okay, now how am I going to take this guy? And so probably my greatest fulfillment has been getting those guys, those stories of the guys that didn't want to train, which in the NFL was the vast, they're great athletes. They're not there because of their lifting ability. Um, Probably college players on the whole, relatively speaking, enjoy weight training more. They realize they got to do it to get to where they're at. In the NFL, it's, those guys are there. It's not because of their weightlifting ability or their ability to train. Um, so it's just little bit of a different dynamic. So, yeah.
How how has training changed over the last couple of decades?
I think players, athletes, we know more about training now. There's more information out there that's accessible to people, whether it's right or wrong, or whether it's good or bad. There's there are there's plenty of training noise out there. Instagram. I look at Instagram. I look for cool things just as much as anybody else. Um, so where there's more available, uh, and I think the coaches being more reasonable now with what we program, and what is best for this particular athlete versus what do I like or what am I good at? Or from where I sit, the idea that we're going to make you a better lifter, whether it be a bench press, a squat, or a power clean. We're going to train with the end result of being better at that lift. I think we are slowly, at least we are, moving toward how do we move, and what is the activity, the expression we're training for, and how do we best arrive at that? So I think there's more openness to, and I wouldn't call it, I don't know what the term functional means, but I would say training like a human being for the activity that we're going to perform in, and what are the things we need for that. And certainly certain lifts can be a part of that. Absolutely. Push, pull, squat, hinge for sure. But those lifts not being an end in itself. Luke Day has a great, he talks about not just being barbell trained for a football demand. And I really like that. We're not barbell trained for a football demand. They're lifting with a barbell is a sport there are sports that involve lifting a barbell, either at high speed in Olympic lifts or heavy and slow in power lifts. It's a sport unto itself. And those sports are beautiful when done right, wonderful, impressive. Train for those sports if that's your end goal. Use components or pieces of that information can be applied to a football demand. But I think we're moving more reasonably toward the health of the athlete and the performance of the athlete, and where does that well-being lie in that training, in that programming demand.
I know I'm not going to be able to do this, but I'm going to try to pigeonhole you a little bit.
Okay.
Like just first gut response.
Okay.
Gut reaction type stuff.
Yeah.
What's your favorite reset?
Rolling. Probably
awesome.
the egg roll.
All right. In the weight room, what's your favorite lift?
A kettle, the long squat to press.
Oh yeah, that's good. Yeah, real good. That is
a kettlebell, a dumbbell, a center mass bell, a fat bell, whatever you call it.
That is Tim approved. That's probably like, to me, that's like, why do anything else?
Yes,
anyway.
Yes.
All right. So on the football field, though, in the weight room for the football field? What do you think? What movement or weight lift transfers the most to the football field?
I really like crawling. I like the loaded gait pattern. So I'm going to have to bump that answer to include loaded crawling and loaded gait carrying or dragging. But anything in that gait pattern that's loaded, game changer, you call it the secret sauce, I think, just that ties everything together. So I'd say the loaded gait pattern.
Yeah, you're really good at this. All right, so get a little harder then.
Yeah.
Favorite, so after a hard training session, either in the weight room or the field, for recovery, what's your favorite food for your athletes?
Ooh, favorite food. I thought you were going to say my favorite thing would be to breathe. My favorite food is oxygen of food. Is breathing.
Well, it is burned for energy.
You know what? I would say after and I just did it today. My favorite is I made my son and I a strawberry milk, frozen strawberries. We'll even put a cherry bundy in there, and some vanilla protein powder and ice, and stir it up. So when you're hot, it's sweet for some, but it's just a very refreshing strawberry smoothie, basically, with cherry juice in it. That's probably my favorite. Just and then a cup of coffee after that. like that combination. The coffee to kind of okay, let's get the engines rolling again after that after that beautiful workout, and it's kind of it catches the sweet spot of like the brain chemistry after the workout where you start feeling really good and you have a smoothie and then some coffee and the whole thing. It's a crescendo.
All right.
Very
So
good.
crescendo.
Crescendo. I'm in the C's now.
All right, but look, it's almost 5:00
Okay.
and you're talking about drinking coffee.
I know.
So do you make the smoothies for your athletes then? Do you have
I don't. I have, I have done I've labeled, I've handed out, I've made. At times here, although I get in trouble for it, I get permission and I make them for myself and for Luke or Aaron if we're training together. Yeah, if someone's training with me or we're a late finishing workout, I'll make a smoothie for them. Yeah, I make a pretty good smoothie.
All right. And what are your thoughts on ice baths?
Great question. I'm going to side with the research in certain, like, let's say we strength train, we disturb the tissue cellular disruption, and then the remodeling that's going to be the adaptation that will happen as part of our design, and if the dose is right. I will honor the research that said, hey, let that process happen. Don't try to shut that down with ice. Don't try to blunt that let the adaptation occur. I love ice baths later in the day. Okay, at the end of the day, or I like them first thing in the morning to clear my mind, to the concomitant, the calming of the nervous system that comes after that, the centered focused, the well-being, the brain chemistry, all those things, I guess dopamine, all the positive changes that come from that, and dealing with that, like, I don't want to do this, but I'm going to do it. So the will to step toward difficult things first thing in the morning, or not around training as a recovery modality, but later in the day as a life recovery methodology. So we have the Saluda River a mile from my house, and it's year round 50 degrees. And we go down there all the time. Now 50 degrees there's colder, but it's such a centering, peaceful, wonderful, feels great, feels good to feel good. Ice baths fit into what should be part of our day, just not as a direct recovery modality for training, unless you're in 2-a-days where I've got a short window and I've got to maximize that recovery for the next day. Maybe then it can move closer, but train, move your body, let the adaptations occur and support that. Put ice somewhere else, because that's more well-being and nervous system enhancement and all that. It's a recovery from the stresses of life. Keep that
awesome.
Separate. Yeah.
All right, last one.
Mm-hmm.
Can or does peanut butter have a place in nutrition for your athletes?
100%. All kinds of nut butters. We've talked about this. I love nut butters. In fact, I've come back like you. I'm just a late adapter. You can chase nut butters. You can chase all kinds of, and they get expensive. I found my way back. In fact, look, okay, here's to answer your question. Okay, here's my cabinet at work. All right. And I'm not going to endorse any, but I've got no almond butter, no stir organic, I've got sunflower butter. Okay, this is my office, but I've found my way back to good old fashioned Jif.
So hard to beat Jif.
I think nuts are are they a complete food? I mean, they're pretty complete, and
they complete me.
Yes. So I found my way back to Jif per your recommendation. I listened, Tim. I listened. just all kinds. Yes, 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 and yes.
Awesome. Chip, this has been a lot of fun. Thanks so much.
Thank you, too. Oh, boy.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Now get outside and play.